Hello, I know I said in the introduction video that I don't like motivation a lot, but after a while it just hit me. I criticized something I don't know the first thing about. It's literally the channel's name and I know nothing about it. So, if I want to use something, I have to at least know what the fuck it is. So here's my basic research on motivation. So, what is motivation exactly? Well, according to businessdictionary.com, and I did not memorize the definition, so I have to read it from here. Well, motivation is internal and external factors that stimulate desire and energy in people to be continually interested and committed to a job, role, or subject, or to make an effort to attain a goal. But that's way too complicated for my simple brain. For the simplicity's sake, motivation is a word derived from the word motive. A motive is your reason for a desire, and motivation is what pushes that reason for desire. That is in no way any simpler. Whatever, I'll just imagine that everyone already got it, because almost everyone already knows what motivation is without the need to define it. But that's not my question. My true question is, what is motivation chemically? Well, to answer that, we have to look at a little neurotransmitter called dopamine. This is the first time I actually know how to spell it, how to pronounce it. Now, a lot of people would think that dopamine is a chemical in the brain specialized for pleasure only. But that's not true. Because if so, then how do you explain soldiers with PTSD having higher dopamine levels when hearing gunfire? No, they're not turned on by the gunfire. That is in no way any pleasurable. In another study, a team of Vanderbilt scientists gathered a team of go-getters and slackers. They found out that people willing to work more had higher dopamine levels, but in the prefrontal cortex and the striatum, two areas specialized or known to impact motivation and reward. The slackers, however, they found that they still did have dopamine and high levels of it, but at the same time, it was in the anterior insula, which is a place known for emotions and risk perception. So to clear the point, dopamine has more to do with motivation and cost/benefit analysis than pleasure itself. I don't want to dive deep into it, but if you really are interested about dopamine and want to read more about it, then you can do so in the description down below. I linked an article that talks about it, alongside with all the other studies I mentioned. Well, now that we know what dopamine is, another question stands tall. What is the correlation between dopamine and motivation? Why did I mention all these stuff? Well, for starters, dopamine is a neurotransmitter molecule that influences brain pathways that are involved in motivation, movement, cognition, and reward-driven pathways. You have to remember that. When your brain finds a reward, the amount of dopamine that is released in your brain is calculated by the amount of reward you have. So a bigger reward has more dopamine released in your brain. Lower rewards have lower dopamine levels. Did you know I failed chemistry in the 9th grade, which was like the last year? Moving on to the next chemistry related subject. There's another chemical that people tend to forget a little. It's my boy. It's the happiness chemical. It's serotonin. Now you might tell me, but Jason, it's called the happiness chemical, not the motivation chemical. And to that I respond, it's true. But there is a huge correlation between happiness and motivation, dummy. In fact, in a study, they gathered 50 students, 25 of them were male and 25 of them were females. And they found out that there is a huge correlation between happiness and motivation. And it had a reliability of 95%. That is a lot. And scientists are using serotonin to try and cure depression. I'm saying this as if like it's new. It's not new, it's a little old, but at the same time, like, I just wanted to mention the fact that in a study, scientists have used optogenetics, which is using light to manipulate neurons. They used this method on mice, and they wanted to see how serotonin would affect the mice behaviors. However, the only difference they saw was that stimulation reduced the locomotive speed by 50%. In general, this stimulation of serotonin producing neurons did not affect any other behaviors. However, after about 3 weeks of using the same method on the same mice, they found that there's actually an increase of the locomotive speed by 30 to 40% compared to the starting point. That is pretty cool. So it's basically very effective, but it takes a little bit of time. People have been theorizing it, because people have had theories about the fact that why it takes so long is because the serotonin builds new neurons, but that's not something I'm professional at, neither is this, but like I did not research this and I'm not sure of what I'm saying. So that's what motivation is. A bunch of chemicals in your brain affecting your behaviors. So there's another question that I asked was, what are the mechanisms of motivation? Well, I kinda already explained it in the video. I still wanted to give a more direct and clear answer. While I didn't find a lot of articles about it because my question is a bit too vague, I still found this image that best describes the mechanism of motivation. And yes, even this picture has a link in the description below if you want to see it. It was taken from an article talking about managing employees, so if you want to see it, it's not bad to read about it. So, one of the most important questions now are, is motivation good or bad? Well, to answer this question, we'll have to look at the two types of motivation, extrinsic and intrinsic. The extrinsic motivation is basically doing something primarily just to receive a noticeable reward, which is not the best idea, because if there is no noticeable reward, if there is no visible reward in front of you right now in the short term, you will not feel as motivated to do something. You will only need motivators in front of you to study, and if there is no motivators, there is a lot of effort put into it. That's why we have to look at the other thing, which is intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation stems from the meaningfulness of the work you do. You are driven by what you yearn to do, even if there is no noticeable reward or compensation. And research suggests focusing on intrinsic more than the extrinsic motivation, because they found that focusing on extrinsic motivation decreases performance. So now that we know what kind of motivation we should have, the biggest question stands tall right now. Can we rely on such unstable emotion? Well, while I didn't find one article that supports the relying on motivation, I found one thing that interested me, which is motivating yourself. Motivating yourself is the equivalent of intrinsic motivation, which is basically relying on your long-term goals. If you do so, then it's much easier for you to do something. So, try to write your goals, your long-term goals, on a big piece of paper or something like this behind me. Basically put them in a place where you can see them all of the time, or try to remind yourself constantly of them, or just try to visualize them all the time in your brain. But it's still not enough, god damn it. Oh, well, here's the question. You have the most important exam in the entire world that'll determine your future. Imagine that's an actual thing. And it's tomorrow. It's due tomorrow. And your loved one dies this specific night before the exam. Now, what do? You rely on motivation? You can't. Your brain is toxicated by bad thoughts, sad memories, and just it wants to cry all the time. You can't rely on motivation in that specific time. You have to rely more on how disciplined you are. But just a reminder that when something bad happens to you, you don't have to push yourself. In fact, take a break, a full day break if you need. Despite losing a little bit of money, it's better than losing a little bit of yourself. But if you absolutely must and absolutely have to, then discipline is your savior. Try to get out of the place that the person died in. Try to be in an environment with less distractions and less people to talk about this specific thing. And try to focus as much as you can at this specific thing, and try to be as disciplined as you can be. Which sounds a little inhumane to try to forget about the person you love the most, but you're not forgetting about him, you're just trying your best to move on. Moving on is not the equivalent of forgetting. So yeah, do that. But I'm trying to talk in general. If you have a bad period of your time, try to take a break. Whether it was a day, a month, I'm not kidding, take an entire month a break if you must, if you really need. And if you absolutely have to go to work or go to study or do anything productive despite having a very bad life, then discipline is your savior. And don't forget that sacrificing a little bit of money and a little bit of your house, a little bit of your friends is much better than sacrificing a little bit of yourself. So with that, I will end the video. A little update is, sorry I didn't upload much. I tried my best to keep like the first 5 or 6 videos on a weekly schedule, but it's kind of like, I will not just shift blame. I did slack a lot. I am a very big slacker, and I hate that. So far the productivity experiment is going great, but I did slack in a lot of days. But I would say it did give a big effect on me, and I will give you a video about it. It's not now. So I just want to say also that the laptop that I'm using to edit my videos on is a little fucked up right now. So I'm working with a Core 2 Duo, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and that's about it. That's how strong my PC is. So it's very hard to edit a video, a full HD video on it. So please forgive me, and please just be a little patient. Thanks for watching. You mean a lot to me, and I hope you have a very beautiful future despite what it brings, and goodbye.